All right, all right, all right. We are here. It is Monday, and we are here for another wonderful episode of the Bright Girls in Business podcast. And we have the lovely Miss Jasmin Brand as our guest today. And we are going to be talking about creating the life that you want. And the reason that I feel that this topic is so important for us to delve into today is because so many of us are first time and first generation entrepreneurs. We're used to being in corporate spaces or traditional workplaces. And when we step out into them and we have these thoughts, these ideas, these visions, sometimes we don't really know how to leverage the power that is really in entrepreneurship as far as being able to own our own time, own our own thoughts, our own space, and be and create the lives that we want. So thank you, Miss Jasmin, for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm still trying to get the life I want though, Chanelle. So
Well, let me tell you something. I don't think any of us have perfected that. I don't know that anybody this side of heaven will or ever perfect the life that we just absolutely dream to have. But the reason that I think that you are a great person to talk to about this is because I've watched your entrepreneurial journey over years now. I've seen you make a couple pivots, a couple shifts, and you are somebody that I can honestly say is unapologetic about being an authentic person and being who you want to be and showing up as how you want to in certain spaces. And so you may not have the perfect life that you think you want because we all have grandiose dreams and visions and things like that. But I love the fact that, like I said, I've watched you over time. You start something, you get it going, and you're like, okay, this needs to tweak a little bit. Let's shift and let's go in a different direction. Because when I first met you, I think it was at least 7 years ago, and you were at that point, you were running Brand Point, which was your agency, right?
That's right.
So tell me a little bit about, I guess, your entrepreneurial journey, because now, I mean, you've gone from Brand Point, you've done a couple things in between, and now you're doing HerTexas. So tell me kind of how you spun off into these different things.
Yeah, it's so funny too. I've had to accept those pivots too. I've always tried to listen to my intuition. When I was younger, I would really consider those pivots as failures. But as I've gotten older, I've realized the pivots were so necessary because it's so important to let go of things when it's time to let them go and keep it moving. But I still do an agency work. So by trade or by profession, I'm a marketer. I had plans to go to law school though. That was kind of what I wanted to do. I wanted to work for the UN. And then I took the LSAT and that was a wrap because I did not test well at all. And I also went and visited a couple of law schools. I went and sat in UT's law school. It was like 1,000 people. I was like, this isn't for me. And so I always knew the creative direction was going to be where I wanted to go. And so I still do an agency. Brand Point has evolved over time. When I first started, I really was just trying to get clients. I had no idea really what I was doing. And my dad too, at the time, he was still here, he was like, you need to have our last name in the company name. Like we used to get into arguments about it. I was like, oh my God, this is so dramatic. But I ended up Googling Brand Point and it was actually a term without the E. I had to add the E because there's a British company that already has it. But it was about creating compelling experiences. And I was like, ooh, this sounds interesting. I can make Brand Point work. And so in the beginning, it was when I first started, this is when Twitter and social media, to really date myself, was really starting to get going. And at the time, I thought I wanted to have a big, huge agency, but realized how much money and time that would require. A lot of companies, though, at the time were just now really getting into social media. I did events really well. And my sweet spot was trying to create kind of a convergence between those two. A lot of companies were doing either events back then, this was about 12 years ago, or they were doing social media. So you'd go on their social media, you come to their event was like horrible, or you go to the event, you're like, oh, this is an incredible company. You come on social, you're like, whoa, where's the personality? And so that little sweet spot in between those two things is where I really started to kind of make a name and started to get clients back then. And I didn't really know what I was doing from a marketing budget, even how to hire. And so over the course of the last 10 years, I've definitely have learned a ton about how to run a company because I had no idea. And we have hustlepreneurs in my family, but not actual CEOs. So just learning to be a CEO, I'm still learning. And it's a journey I think that won't ever end. But the whole time I was doing the agency work, I realized I love the creative part of running an agency, but did not like the agency part of the agency. The operations piece. Also too, when you start to get really large, the idea just of hiring people, I'm horrible at it. I've made so many mistakes with it. And also too, more money, more problems. I had big goals for where I wanted to go creatively, but was like not prepared for just some of the stuff that happens when you start to grow something large, even personally too. Friends change, you don't have time for yourself. And I was really running ragged for a long time. And I realized a stopping point, probably 2016, where I just missed creating content and creating my own stuff. You know, sometimes it's when you're in consultant, you're part of projects, but you're still not part of it because you're a consultant. And I kind of miss being part of stuff. And so I started blogging and started just creating my own content. I started doing my own little random photo shoots around 2016 and realized Brand Point needed to evolve into something different. And at that time, I went to Booker T. Washington, so still went to all kind of live shows, and just outside of work, I was meeting so many amazing female artists. They were like, we don't have a social media channel, Jasmin. The shows, we don't really get a chance to perform our own stuff. I was like, well, let's just do our own photo shoot. This was probably 2017. And I just started taking female artists around the city, doing photo shoots, helping them with their content, just doing this just because. It's then eventually turned into something called Beats by Her, which is still one of my favorite projects, but I just wasn't even prepared for the music industry. Let me just side note that. I'm not cool enough for it, but it basically was a platform where we would host monthly shows for female artists, and we just try to help them be able to deliver their voice. Because what I discovered as I was still doing my agency work, but started dabbling into my own little projects, was that the music industry is still very male run. And even a lot of the promoters for shows, which I had no idea, I didn't know that was a whole other world too. So we had a partnership with House of Blues and started putting on these monthly shows. I loved going to our shows. They were so much fun. I hated running them because it was basically, we'd have 5 to 7 different female artists. So cool though, drummers, rappers, all women, so much fun. But like managing that process and working with creatives, I'm a creative too, so I know I'm horrible to work with, but creatives, like, what time is it? So we did it for about a year though. We did a huge show at the Granada. I mean, we did some really cool stuff, but speaking of those pivots, I started saying, okay, I don't know if this is what I want to do. It's still a project that's such a big part of my heart and soul, just music and creative art. So eventually we'll probably go back to it. But at the same time, still doing my agency work, I started realizing that we needed this was at the time of diversity inclusion. So right now it's a big conversation piece, but I would say probably 2018 still wasn't quite as much. Like now you hear about diversity inclusion all the time. I was asked to put on an event for our founders, a diversity inclusion event. And they wanted me to kind of talk about the startup community. I had no connection with the startup community because I was just from the marketing world. And my friend Craig at the time was like, you need to reach out to this guy named Bradley who launched CFW, see if you can get some thoughts on that before you run your startup event. He and I connected. This led to my next pivot because at the time I had dabbled into Beats by Her. I was like, okay, I like creating my own stuff. Okay, I don't know if I want to do the agency stuff anymore, but that pays the bills. So let me keep doing it. But at the time, I started going to startup events. I started seeing that there wasn't a lot of Black women in the startup space. So for me, I'm always looking for opportunities where we aren't there. And then there was an opportunity to get a leadership role at Launch DFW. And Launch DFW at the time was, I'd say it's a events platform or community organization for the startup community in North Texas. And just to be a Black woman leading that, I thought this is an opportunity to maybe start to shape the vision. So that was my next pivot. I ran Launch DFW for a couple of years. Amazing, because I had just such a newbie to the startup community and got to meet so many entrepreneurs and female founders, which was fascinating. Very challenging though, because the startup community is still, once again, another industry that's led by men. The diversity is increasing and getting better, but it's still challenging. And from a leadership perspective, very few Black women in the space. So after a couple of years of doing that, I go, okay, I know I don't want to do my agency stuff full time. Still doing it though, because it still pays pretty nicely. I thought startup community, I think these are my people though. I started meeting all these female founders. I think this is the tribe. But I don't want to work for someone else because I'd already gotten to taste that freedom, if you will, although there's a price to pay for the freedom. But I had a taste of it. And I go, you know what? If I'm going to build something in the startup space, I should just build it for myself. And so I left Launch, 2018, and started thinking about what was next. And was like, maybe I'll go back to agency, because one of the things about on an entrepreneurial journey, you feel very bold and like you want to try new stuff out, but every now and then you're like, I'm tired of this. Yes. I want something stable. I'm tired of it just gets old. I was like, maybe I'll just go back to the agency stuff, Jasmin. It's predictable. You have people that want to work with you. It's a nice check. And then I took on a project, and within a month I was like, no, I know where my heart is. And so at the same time, though, I was still meeting women in the startup space after I left. They're like, what's going on next for you? Come to my event, or do you know an investor? I was just getting all these emails because I had been in that role for a while, and was realizing, I was like, there has to be a platform here in Texas, because Texas, it's a huge state. There has to be something that's connecting, because I'm slow as a turtle with email, so it can't be with me. So I was like, there has to be something that's connecting Dallas to Houston, or there has to be something that's connecting the women in Waco to what's happening around the state. So I researched it for 2 years. I was hosting events around the state as well, informal networking events and coffees. I was hosting quite a bit of stuff, and realized there wasn't anything. And that's really what led me to the latest part of my journey, which is HerTexas, which is basically that connection point for women here in the state. It's interesting though, because Texas is going through all kinds of stuff. Texas is always going through stuff because it's a hot mess. It has moments of a hot mess, but there's so much opportunity. And when I step back to look to see how much opportunities here, where we're located, just geographically speaking. And even if we think about Black founders, we're Silicon Valley, and we see the concentration of Black founders in this country. The concentration of Black founders in this country is Atlanta all the way up through DC. So what's the state between Silicon Valley and where all the Black founders are? It's Texas. It just makes complete sense. I was gonna say it was more affordable than California, but shoot, with them coming here, it's
crazy.
Right?
I'm like, go back.
Yes. Yeah, go back home. So that's my latest, I guess, a venture or pivot is HerTexas. I probably will still always do agency work because I still love creating for other people, but I think it's more of a phase of my career is trying to solve challenges that I have had as a founder. And I really see it firsthand when I was in the start phase. So many women quitting, wanting to start something. And I was like, this is just not right. In Texas, Black women, we're the fastest group of entrepreneurship here in the state, but we also make the least amount of revenue, and we quit faster than our counterparts. Something's wrong here. But if we think about it, it's pretty obvious. We need support.
Yeah. And
it can't just be posting us in Black History Month or now with Juneteenth now. You can't just do that, right? So because we saw that, we saw the post, we saw the black square, we still need help, right? So that's not enough. And so at this point, it's like we keep trying to sit at other tables that have been created here. No problem with that though, but our challenges are still here. So HerTexas is really about creating a new table. And you do need a Black woman at the table to address Black women's challenges. You just do, because even right now on our social channels, specifically, you're gonna see a lot of Black women on it because I'm Black. and even Latina, you would think in anything with Texas related, you would see nothing but Latina. No, you still don't. And we know the percentages here in the state of Texas too. And I see so many Texas facing brands. I'm like, where are the Latinas at? Like, so it's just crazy, right? So that's kind of my latest pivot, Chanelle. It probably might be another pivot, I'm sure, between the next 10 years, but that's my latest one.
So tell me this, I'm hearing you talk about going from agency to startup to now, being a supporter or a champion in that space for women. What would you say is a thread between those things? And the reason that I ask you that is because so many times as women, you just stated, we get out here, we start, and then we quit.
Yep.
And then we just go back to either what's comfortable, we go back to work or whatever, whatever we were doing before. But I'm of the school of thought, and I don't know if you feel this way too, that you have to give yourself a chance to try things to figure out what really works and what really sticks. And so that's why I really admire you for doing that. But what I've also found is that typically, if you're staying true to self, there's a thread between the things that you do. There's something that is in common, right?
Yeah.
So what would you say is that thing that you hold on to throughout the projects that you worked on?
That's a really good question, because I think you're exactly right. I think there's a connection to everything. I don't know any other way but to be a problem solver or to look for solutions. And I'm also one of those people, like, if I see something wrong, I'm definitely someone who's saying something. And I also am very impatient and bossy too. Like, that's just what happens at this point. And I'm like, it's our time. Like, when are you going to get to Black female found? Okay, we'll just do it ourselves. Like, I'm definitely in that situation. Even with the Beats by Her, the women were like, we keep trying to go to these shows. We keep trying to perform. They're putting us on last, so they only want us to dress sexy. I'm like, we'll just do it ourselves. I think it comes from that, the drive to say, I feel like I trust my gut and intuition. I always have. But that, I would say, there's a price to pay for it too. I've had lots and lots of success, but I also, like, I'm still not married. I don't have any children. Like, there's definitely this thing where, the question of, can you have it all? And I go, you can definitely have it all at the same time. I don't know. I think it depends as you evolve. And for me, I think I've been open to the possibilities, but I also have always been very honest with myself to say there's a cost to doing business and creating the life you want. There's always going to be a cost for it. But it's worth it for me because I've been able to set my own standards and also kind of do what I want to do. Some people don't want to pay that price. And I always tell women specifically, like, keep, as long as you can, keep your full-time with the side hustle. Like, don't feel like you have to hop off and do this, because I think right now we're in this culture where it looks very glamorous to be an entrepreneur. People popping bottles on Instagram. I'm like, I wish, like, I have my moments when I get to pop it for sure, but in the back of my mind, I have to work right after, right? So it's this thing where we're glamorizing this just journey. And this is why there's only like 2% of us that have really crossed over to do it. It's not for the faint of heart. And there's no shame in working full-time and doing something on the side. And I feel like we need to have those conversations more. Everybody's not meant to be CEO. I don't even tell people I'm CEO because A, people ask for money. Yep. Or B, I get a bill for something, right? So the thing is, it's like, it's okay to as a woman to have choices and to do multiple things until you figure out what you want to do. I have so many women will tell me, they're like, Jasmin, I'm trying to hurry up so I can leave my job. I'm like, girl, why? That check? Keep that check as long as you can until you can, to the absolute moment where you're like, okay, it's time to go. It's just like in a relationship, when that thing's over, and you hold on thinking it's going to change. You're like, you kind of know. Same thing with when it's time to become an entrepreneur full-time. Don't let outside influences change your trajectory. I would say that's the one thing I've been consistent about from an agency, from startup, is that I've always tried to figure out what works best for me, and also been open to the possibilities. Sometimes we can get very stuck on directions. And for me, I've been open to these pivots. I haven't always been, because I think pivoting and making mistakes is not always something that people talk about, although we all do it. A lot of people, y'all just seen mine because they've been very public, right? You're like, okay, this was working. This was super successful. This was, and I'm gonna come back to this. Like, mine have just been very public, but we need to talk more about that pivots are okay. Or, you know, I got engaged, but I don't know if I want to get married. It's okay to pause it. Like, as women, we need to give ourselves the freedom to say, I'm doing what works for me. And it may be 25 when it happens. I might be 50 when it happens, but it's on my own terms. That's probably been, Chanelle, the most consistent thing, is I'm trying to do things on my own terms.
I love that. I love that. And what I was, as you were talking, something that came to my mind was, in order to be able to stand in that space and be unapologetic about championing yourself. Because so many times as women, we're used to championing our kids or our husbands or our friends or mother, sister, father, whoever, and putting other people first.
Yes.
That we end up on the back burner, and then we end up, you know, depleted or feeling resentful or whatever, or, you know, just unfulfilled.
Yeah.
But in order for you to stand in that space the way that you do, it's my assumption, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that you have to have a good support system behind you.
You know what? Yeah, well, you know what? My very first support system was my father, for sure. And I always will bring him up. He's no longer here. He passed away in 2009. But his presence was so huge, even from first grade. I remember him telling me, like, being very kind of like bold. You know, I went to a private Catholic school growing up, and we couldn't afford the uniforms. All the girls had to wear skirts or dresses or whatever. We couldn't afford those, but so I had to wear pants. Now, today's Jasmin be like, oh, that was so cool. I was ahead of the game. No, back then it was very embarrassing to be the only girl in the whole school wearing pants, right? And my dad would have these conversations, and he bought me shoes specifically to wear with the pants. Like, this is the kind of stuff that he was putting in my mindset. And little girls at my school started wearing pants after that, because who wants to play in a skirt or a dress? So he was my first support. I would also say my family, for sure. But my life, business would not be anything without the women in the community that I've been a part of, that have supported me, come to my events. Like, I don't even think about, I sometimes it gets overwhelming thinking about the women that I've connected with over the last 10 years, and they still continue to support me. I'm horrible at asking for help. Like, that's one of the things I've been trying to do better about. Like, hey, beloved, if you could, I just don't think that way, because I've always had to kind of build things on my own. And when I do reach out to them, and so they're like, yeah, Jess, we've been waiting on you to ask, what are you doing? Of course. But the women have been my biggest support. The ones that told me something was not right, you should go this direction. It's definitely a mentorship versus sponsorship. I've had incredible male mentors, female mentors, but I've had women who have sponsored me and be like, that's horrible, stop. Or keep going, or you know what, yes, I love that. And I've had some friends, they're friends now at this point, colleagues, friends that have been to every event I've hosted. They've seen the good ones. They also see the ones that were not so great. I was going through some photos the other day, and I have 2 friends now, and I was like, you know, y'all have been at every event since literally 2000. They were like, we know. We know for sure. So it's my
friends. Let's give a round of
applause. Exactly right. Oh my God, especially to put up with me too, right? Oh my God. It's
hard to find people that are solid like that on this journey, like. Because as you change, and I know that you've seen this, you've gone through seasons and phases throughout your entrepreneurial journey, and it looks different. You show up different. Even though you're the same person, you know, it's a different season. It's a different iteration of who you are. And everybody cannot transition with you. You know, they love you at this point. And then when it's the next season, they're like, I don't know, I can't, you know, I can't do that. I can't go there with you.
Yes.
So I applaud your friends. They know who they are. I hope they're watching.
Oh yeah, for sure.
We applaud you, sister, because let me tell you, everybody ain't able.
So true.
Everybody ain't able.
That's family too, Chanelle too. Shoot.
Listen, look.
Yes.
For real, that's a blessing. That really is a blessing, Jasmin.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, so we now have HerTexas going on.
Yes.
And now you're giving other women the light to shine and the space to be great and the encouragement to create their lives the way that they want to. So what would you say is, if you were to pivot tomorrow, if you were just to wake up tomorrow and say, you know what, this is the end of this journey, my leg of this journey with HerTexas. Okay. What would you want your lasting imprint on the organization and these women to be?
That's a great question. You know, it's definitely bigger than me. And I'm only just getting it started, but the Texas is a state, as I've said, that's got challenges with so much promise and opportunity, but this is going to be a journey. And it definitely, I don't want it to be about me. I think I'll get it started. But I think if a woman hears about HerTexas and comes to an event or reads a piece of content or watches a video and she's like, I think I want to keep going, or I want to start something here, that I would feel like that would be success for me. Since even with my agency work and all the work I've done, it's always about creating opportunities for others, because even what I've discovered is that my biggest networking kind of win has always been trying to create opportunities for other people. In the beginning, when I didn't really have a marketing budget and didn't know what I was doing, I was constantly connecting people. I was constantly like, hey, you should know about her, putting out that energy, because it always came back to me, even volunteering with different organizations, like, hey, do you need a brand strategy? Can I help out? It sounds very basic, like when they tell you, if you want to lose weight, drink water and work out. You're like, really? Yes, it's that basic. But like us actually thinking about others, even in the networking too. I go into networking events thinking about what other people are doing. And for HerTexas, my journey has been here in Texas. It's been successful. It's also been very, very challenging. But I know that the women here are incredible. And I think that's probably one of the most exciting parts about it, is that we have a level of diversity and the women here are incredible. And people, I think, have the wrong perception of what's happening in Texas. To your point, exactly, you know, us having a platform to get a chance to talk. Right now, when you hear about Texas, you hear a very limited viewpoint of what's happening here. And I just had a conversation with two young women earlier today, both Indian. One's created an AI-powered platform to help with chronic disease. It's called Yumlish. And the other woman used to be the chief equity officer for San Antonio, who's created a platform for San Antonio residents. Both live here, both work here. You would never get to connect with them. And so hopefully my biggest legacy is that HerTexas is a platform for all the incredible stuff that's happening here in Texas. I think in each city you have different organizations that are doing that, but we hope to be kind of the fuel. I know for me, when I've been successful, someone was able to push me a little bit. Someone made a connection for me. Someone posted or tagged me. That's so critical right now. And so that's kind of what we hope to be, as an engine for things that are happening here in the state, especially after COVID-19. We saw what happened to working women, mass exodus, leaving the workforce, but also just if you were able to survive after the pandemic, and I wouldn't say after, shoot, we're still in it in some aspects, right? But if you made it, I mean, we need to make sure we circle around you. We don't need to take that for granted. And I don't mind a like on a post, but a purchase goes even further. And I think we as women have to activate our the idea what it means to be women's empowerment. In fact, I don't always even like to say the word empowerment, because I think a lot of us, we already empowered. We woke up early, we've been working, like we got it. So it's like, okay, now we need to move each other forward. And we talk about it, but are we actually going to be about it? And I think this is what is the next level for us. If we really want to truly be empowered women, we've got to actually start to activate some of that stuff. If the woman next to you is suffering or struggling, or she just quit, that is not women's empowerment for me. And that's kind of what's happening here in the state of Texas. And I'm like, that just can't happen on my watch for sure.
I love that. I love that. So something that you said earlier about 3 questions back, but it's been sticking in my head and I got to ask it. Because we were talking about your support system and, you know, being able to create the life that you want, things like that. And you said that you have a hard time asking for help.
Yes.
All right. I've been reading a book, or I read a book and I've been discussing it with friends. It's called Get Over I Got It. It's by Elaine Fluker. It's a really good book.
Ooh,
highly recommend it. But it talks about the power of support. And being able to be vulnerable enough to ask for help, to realize where you need help and things like that. And so my question to you is, where do you need help to push your vision forward with HerTexas?
You know, a great question. I think it's something that is an ongoing journey for me. I also think just in general, Black women, though, we usually are expected to take care of things, to take care of others, to make sure things are happening, moving. Like even when we were growing up, my mom made sure we all got up to make it to church. You know, my dad's barely waking up. You know what I mean? Just these things you get to see as a little girl or whatever. And it's been my biggest challenge. And when I've made the most money and been the most successful is when I had support. It's always been when I didn't do the best and when I failed in some aspect or an idea didn't work, it's because I try to do everything myself. You know, with HerTexas, I think it's the support of other women who and letting them know what I'm doing. So sometimes you can get in the weeds when you're building something, just trying to actually build the actual structure of something. We have a tech piece of what we're doing too. You can get in the weeds of it. And I would think the biggest support for me is actually just doing what we're doing now, talking about it, telling women our mission and our vision and telling them how they can kind of get involved. I sometimes am fool people because they think I'm an extrovert, but I'm actually a hardcore introvert. So I don't do a lot of talking in that aspect, right? Which is when I have friends who are extroverts, they do that perfect match for me because they do a lot of the talking and social media posting that I really don't want to do. I was talking to a girlfriend of mine and I kind of got very spoiled with networking because I've not had to really do any networking or promoting for anything for a long time. I've definitely had some success here. And also too, I've just tried to network and I networked for so long, was going to so many events that I've built a pretty large network. Yeah. But even today, the biggest thing I need to do is continue to expand my network, continue to go to different events, talking about what I'm doing and not keeping it inside and not getting in an introverted mode where you're trying to be perfectionist about things. So one of my goals I've set for myself each week is to try to talk to 5 new people, which sounds so crazy. I was telling a girlfriend of mine, she goes, what? I said, yes, because I can kind of I have like a large network, but that doesn't mean I'm actually talking to people, right? So like in introverted, you could go for days. And not talk to anybody.
I sit in this apartment alone and I'm perfectly fine and I'm not talking about anything. And sometimes like I'll want to reach out to people, but then I'm like, who do I want to reach out to? I don't know.
Exactly.
And then I just keep going. But people, like you said, people think that I'm an extrovert because they see me.
I thought you were.
No, it takes energy to do this. It takes effort to do this, okay?
You do all your videos. I thought you were a total extrovert.
I'm talking to a camera. I'm not talking to people. So in my mind, it's a different.
Good point.
Yeah. So, I get it. I totally.
So you were thriving in quarantine,
baby. Listen, when they started talking about going outside, and then people started inviting you places, and I was like, "What?" Like, no.
I got sad, Chanelle. I got sad when they said stuff was opening up.
Oh, I'm like, are y'all kidding me? Like, y'all really want to go back outside?
Oh, I know. I like being inside.
And that's the life that I want. Okay, we talk about creating the life that you want.
Me too.
The life that I want is the one where I can be to myself, nose to the ground, and I can do what I need to do and not be bothered. Okay.
Very similar. Same.
So funny. So what would you tell to all the women that are a part of your tribe, just pivoting off of what we just talked about, asking for help, and even understanding who we are as people, and not, trying to force ourselves into spaces that we just don't fit.
Yes.
I think that that's a part of a lot of our pivots too, is we get into these spaces and we realize, okay, it looked good from over on the side, but once I got in the VIP, I realized
that's exactly it.
This is not the place I want to be.
Yes.
So what would you tell women about being unapologetic about just pivoting? What would be your advice?
You know what? I posted about this yesterday. My sister gets to hear all my complaining and stuff too. She goes, "Oh my God, I'm gonna need you to get off social media," because she's like, "You definitely starting to sound old." Because I'll see people posting these things, really creating like this image of stuff, and I'm like, "What? That is not the reality of stuff." And or very concerned about other people's thoughts on stuff too. And it's like, I posted about this 2 days ago where I said, people are going to talk about you anyway, so you might as well do what makes you happy, because at the end of the day, they're going to talk about you if it's successful, if it's not successful. And I had to learn that as my agency was probably at the peak where I had 10 to 12 people working for me and had huge projects. I started to hear things about myself that weren't true. And I was like heartbroken by it, because I just was so naive, because I thought if you're winning, your friends and people around you would also want you to win too. And that's naivete on me, because I was like, well, why would she be talking about me when, she knows the struggle and stuff. And I realized that's why I made that pivot thing. I was like, I need to be doing work I want to do. Why am I doing all this, the struggle? The money's, after a while, money, it becomes, it's not even about the money at this point, because you don't have time to even enjoy it, because you're working so much, right? And stressed out. And so
it can steal your peace, because you're always trying to one up yourself on a level.
Yes.
And you realize you're doing it for the money and not for the love of what you really got.
Exactly. Or with people's perception too. After a while, like I went and got this huge office. I didn't even need this office. I spent all this money on stuff I really didn't need, because I thought that's what I was supposed to do as a CEO or running an agency, whatever. Me now, I'm like, I'm never leaving my house. In fact, I've like created different pockets too. I was just telling a friend of mine, I set affirmations every day. I write them out old school too. And one of them was, I'm going to build something that's definitely going to be my house, but it's going to be an office, because I don't want to leave, Chanelle. I was thriving during the quarantine, and I like the security of being home. And I'm like, I'm fine with that too. But I think being okay with not always being okay for everybody else is a big part of being unapologetic. And then also wondering too, you let's say you do the stuff that everybody wants you to do, and then did anything really change? No, all you have to do is go back and look at your life and say, I dated this person, or I took this job because I thought y'all wanted to be. It's like, were things perfect? Was life awesome then? Because you did everything what everybody else did. Okay, let's try something different. Let's try something different. Let's try doing something that you actually want to do. And I always tell women too, dip your toe in the water with that, because it's actually scary. For me, I've always just kind of jumped off a ledge and just done stuff. But like, I have to remind myself when I'm talking to women, and when I used to host events a long time ago, when they would come to the event, they would tell me about they're afraid and the fear of stuff. And I was like, why is she afraid to do that? And it's like, you know what? For her, like even coming to an event like this that says it's for female founders was a big deal. So I think on the journey of becoming unapologetic, it's to dip your toe in the water. Don't feel like you got tomorrow, you need to like change life and quit everything and tell everybody bye. Like dip your toe in the water, try something a little bit, see how it feels. Also surround yourself with women that embrace that too. Another part of my journey is not sharing my dreams with people who are dream killers. And I have a lot of these in my family too. They're fine. I just don't even have the conversations with them anymore, because it's no point. They made me feel really bad and sad about stuff. I used to date men too that were very concerned about the amount of hours I was working. And I realized after a certain period of time, I was like, okay, I know why I dated them, to see what I want, what I don't want. And it's like, I should never feel guilty for doing work I love. Now, definitely there's a difference between working too much and someone who just loves you and says, hey, you want to take a break. But I think after a while, when you become unapologetic, I now surround myself. I try to put people in my life that support that. Doesn't mean they agree with me, because I have girlfriends now that be like, Jasmin, what? But they understand me and they accept me for who I am. So I think dip your toe in the water, try it out a little bit, but also try to surround yourself with women who embrace that philosophy too. It makes it a lot easier.
I love that. And that's so true, because I'm a leaper too. Okay. I keep a parachute on my back. So,
I love that.
okay, let's go.
Yes.
Whatever, and I do realize, and I have to constantly train my thought process. Like you said, when you're like, why is she scared to do this? Because I think that too. So I'm like, girl, just do it. Like,
yeah.
But I have to realize that my experience isn't other people's experience.
Yes.
I have to give them grace, and sometimes I have to pull back my own reins.
Yes.
It's just too wild. Like, I don't.
Because like two of us together, Chanelle, we don't need to do that.
We might be able to. You know what? We might be able to like get some.
We need a third person, girl. We do
need a voice of reason, because we be out here like selling popsicles and stuff. Who knows, right?
Yes,
we're both creative, and neither one of us have any kids.
Oh my God, we be 3 in the morning, girl. We working.
So it's like, who are we doing this for? So I totally get that, because for me, it's like, if I don't want to do it, I ain't doing it.
Me too.
And so for other women, I find that they have families, they have to look after, they have a husband to answer to, and so they can't just make these quick moves like.
But even if they don't have that too, the freedom of trusting yourself. I know so many women that don't have husbands, don't have children, still they don't trust themselves. And I think, Chanelle, the reason why you have that parachute is because wherever you go, you're gonna land. You have the confidence in yourself to say, I've already been on this journey. It might be a little scrappy, may not be smooth, but I'm always gonna land on my feet. There's a lot of women that do not have confidence in themselves and think, if I do this, what's gonna happen to me? Whereas I think what you and I probably share is like, we're gonna be all right. It's gonna be bumpy, but we'll be all right.
One way or another. I tell people all the time, I keep an exit strategy packed in the back of my head. Like, if it starts getting a little crazy, I'm like, okay, let me see where's the exit. When I park at the store, I back in so I can get out real quick. Okay?
That's so smart.
So it's just how I think. It's how I am calculated, but I'm very quick. If I make a decision, I've made it. And so you're right. I think that the culture around women entrepreneurship, and just being a female, just being in this experience, it always tells us to second guess ourselves. Always. I mean, if you look at like the commercials in the magazines and everything, it's like, you have to look this way, or you have to show up this way, or you have to be this, or even social media and all these influencers and entrepreneurs that I follow too. And sometimes you can get caught up in that, and it's like, well, I don't look like that, or I don't talk like that, or I'm not that confident, or like I just said, people think that I'm an extrovert, and so they probably are thinking I'm not like her, and I'm like, girl, I'm not like you, And so just really understanding and being comfortable in the skin that you're in is a gift.
Yes.
I'm still learning it as I'm gleaning from you, because I'm in the middle of a pivot. If I'm honest, I'm trying to figure out what Bright Girl Media is going to be tomorrow. And so
you kind of already know, though.
Do I?
I think so. Yeah, I think sometimes. So what I've discovered, Chanelle, too, is sometimes we usually have the solution that's already been here somewhere. We just have so much stuff going on that we don't kind of have silence. A friend of mine, he told me, he was like, he's like, the work you do now feels like it's a culmination of all the stuff you've been trying to do for a long time. And I was like, oh, I didn't even think about that. He goes, yeah, you've been doing HerTexas for 10 years. And I go, I hadn't even really thought about that. And so I think sometimes you've already have where you're wanting to go with it. But I think you can kind of get on this kind of rat race of trying to get things out and trying to finish things out. But I think you already know. My intuition tells me you already know.
You're absolutely right. I'm going to tell you that now. You're right. It is just a matter of me doing two things.
Yep.
One is letting go.
Ooh, that can be hard.
It's hard.
Mm-hmm.
You built this thing and it's become,
Oh yeah,
part of, you wrapped your identity up
yes,
a little bit, and it's become a part of who you are and what you stand for and what people know you
mm-hmm.
for. And so it's hard to detach.
Yes.
So that's one
Mm-hmm.
piece of it. And then the other piece is really just figuring out, and I know that once you take the steps, I've experienced this enough to know that once you start taking the steps toward where you're trying to go, it'll unfold. Things start to, pick up momentum, and then pieces start to come together. And so if you're watching this and you're trying to figure out if you need to pivot, that's the truth. I promise you. You don't have to always see the big,
right,
every piece of the puzzle, but it'll start to come together. And so
I think too, if you just go ahead and say that what the current iteration's done, like let's say it's done today, and then say starting fresh tomorrow. You know who does this really well, and people talk about her because she's controversial for sure, but her business model and her pivots, like Kim Kardashian West, I think is masterful. And in fact, what she's doing is for the month of August for her beauty line is she's going dark with it. She's probably going to drop the West. Who knows what she's going to do? But she literally posted something and said, for the month of August, we're shifting, we're pivoting. We're going to come back with something even better, formulas or whatever. But she's probably at a pivot in her life because she's like, this has been about Kim Kardashian. It's going to always be about Kim Kardashian. I'm going to take my name, Tina Turner style, probably going to get her name back. And I think we can do that in our own lives. I think we can say the same thing. It's like, I'm taking a breather, I'm pausing, I'm going to go journal, I'm going to go take, do what I have to figure out where the next direction is. We'll be here. Ain't nobody going anywhere. They'll be here. Yeah. And if they leave, they were probably going to leave anyway. But most of the people support you, follow you. You could be whatever Chanelle the name is. We still going to be supporting and following you too. So I think Kim Kardashian, I've been following her as we all have for a long time. But like, people underestimate her business acumen. I'm sure Chris is a big part of that, but she's pivoted so many times. I mean, just think about where she started. And I think she's another person who's embraced it. She goes, I know how I started. It was funky, but look where she's at now, right? I think she's a perfect example of that. But I've thought about that too. Just taking a breather and saying like, I'm going to take some time. We'll come back with the new iteration. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. It's been refreshing for me. To do so. So it wasn't even a planned thing. I went to Orlando in the beginning of June, and as soon as I got there, I really was very clear that I needed to pause. And just like pause, do nothing.
Yeah.
And I've never had that feeling, that strong feeling that I just didn't need to do anything.
Wow.
And for the first couple of weeks, it was rough because I'm like, okay, I'm used to being that girl on a regimen. I get up, I do my affirmations, I pray, I sit for a moment.
You create a lot of content too. A lot of content.
So that too, that's a part of it. And then, sitting with my journal, writing down my calendar for the day, what I want to accomplish for the day. Like I'm very, and then to just be like, nope, I'm not doing any of that. I'm just going to be. Because I'm a human being. I'm not a human doing. And I need to just be, and I need to hear. I need to be able to download and like gain clarity. It was so hard at first because I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? Oh my God, my life is falling apart. Oh my God. But then after I got into a groove, I was like, oh, okay. All right. Here we go. Let's go. And now I'm feeling myself slowly but surely, like you said, knowing or gaining a little bit more clarity about what it is that I needed to probably be doing all along.
Oh, I didn't know you had already had your Kim Kardashian moment. Then you definitely know what the next phase is.
I think I do know. It's just a matter of piecing it together in a way that that is, I don't want to say marketable, but that makes sense. That, like I know what I want to do grandiose, but not how to execute it, if that makes sense.
I was just talking to my sister. She's in marketing, and she was asking my advice for some talking points for press release. And it sounded amazing what she had, but it was too much. And I always go back to a third grader. We have a niece named Zaya. She's 3, but she acts 20. And I said, well, Zaya, explain what next is for her. And typically when we keep it very basic level, simple, because the solutions that scale, that make the most money, that give us the most happiness are usually very simple and very basic. We overcomplicate them, right? And that's even with HerTexas. If you saw what I had created like a couple of years ago, it was so convoluted and so much. And now literally it's like, we're just trying to connect Texas women because we think you can build something epic here. Like that's taken 3 years to get there. But I think if you could explain what next Chanelle 2.0 is or 3.0 is to a third grader, I think that's a good starting point. Because at that point, very basic level, regardless of whatever else happens, any amazing partnerships, collabs, whatever, at the end of the day, that's really what it's about, is whatever that base level definition is. And I think that keeps it simple so you don't over complicate it. Because for me, I sometimes will do too much thinking with that analysis creates a paralysis, so that I don't have to make the decision. I'm still brainstorming, I'm still planning because I'm afraid. And it's like, no, like by August 1, Chanelle, it's on and popping. It's time to go.
Okay. I'm taking this. I'm probably gonna go back and I need to, listen to you again. I'm not in think mode because I'm talking. Because you really just dropped some nuggets. And I didn't mean for you to come on here. Hold on, how you come on my situation?
Girl, I just told a friend of mine, I said that people will call me the pusher too, because I can't even help it. I'm like like a sister, big sister. I always will provide advice. And there's probably 12 different businesses here that have been started and I really didn't think about this until they reached out to me and be like, Jasmin, I met up with her because of this email you sent. I have no problem sending a text message or message. I'm like, hey, have you ever thought about this? Or I like your website, but I think you should do this. And it's one of these things where my gut and intuition about people, because I listen and read to people all the time, and I just have a really strong intuition. And so if I see something and I know the person's heart and where they're going, I have to say something. So that's why when you start talking about you were thinking about next level, I'm like, girl, you already have it. You had in Orlando, okay? you already have it. You just need to pull the trigger and know that when you pull the trigger, it's all right. It's gonna come out in phases, and it's just the first phase, and see what happens with it or whatever. I just know that because I heard you talk about it, and I know just following you for so many years, I think you do everything with passion and heart. And it's like, if you already know what that is, so you don't need to overcomplicate it. Because like I said, we all gonna be here, regardless of what you put out.
Look, I can rest easy at night tonight. I don't even have to probably take my melatonin. That is so good. And see, y'all, this is why I do this, okay? This is exactly why I do this. Not because I need to be poured into or filled up, but I love when two women can link up and pour into each other and pull out of each other and collaborate with each other in the spirit of love and sisterhood and like you said, empowerment and building each other up. And that truly is that. I mean, whether I do what I've been doing or what I'm going to be doing, it's the same spirit, it's the same heart, it's the same love. And so I always love to be able to bring people like you who have genuine spirits, who are on the same plane. I feel like attracts like.
Totally.
To be able to pour and share into the community, and then also let your light shine and let other people get to know who you are. I just think it's awesome.
And I appreciate you too because for me, like I told you, I can get in a mode where I'm not talking about the stuff I love to do and talking about what I'm really passionate about, and I forget that there's other women out there same passion. I am so sometimes focused on the community I'm trying to help support that I forget about it for myself. So like I said, I definitely will be reaching out to you, connecting with you as I'm building this, to definitely get your thoughts on it. And I think specifically because like attracts like, but you also have been part of the community for a while. You've seen it from different levels, angles, the good, bad, the ugly. So it's like that input is so necessary, because sometimes you don't want just your own viewpoint in things. I want to hear what other women are saying, good and bad, just so that like I said, HerTexas is something bigger than me, and I want it to be something that women are like, okay, I connect to that. So it's definitely got to have a different viewpoint. So I appreciate you too for giving me a platform today.
Yes, absolutely. Now tell the people who are watching how they can connect with you, how they can become a part of the HerTexas community, and all that other great stuff.
Yeah, so you can go to hertexas.co or .co. We our actual platform will be launching on 8/2, which I'm excited about. That's another piece too, Chanelle. Like that thing has been stop and start because perfectionism in me. And finally, I'm like, you know what? We just gonna put this thing out in phases because I could hold on to something for years and it's still not perfect enough. So I've had to push myself outside of that bubble. But you can go to our website though, and we have a newsletter that we put out every Wednesday. Leading up to this platform launch. This weekend, though, we're doing our first in-person event. It's going to be in Houston. That's one of the things I'm really excited about doing with HerTexas is to change our perception of what it means to network. You know, a lot of times we think as business owners or female founders, we have to get in where we fit in and and go where the money is, go where the opportunities are. And sometimes we're like, I'm only in Dallas, so I'm going to Dallas events. Or I'm in Waco, I'm only gonna do Waco events. And this whole state is up for grabs. And when you think about that, the networking, the clients, the opportunities, it is very exciting. And so that's part of the goal for this weekend is there's several Dallas women gonna be driving down to Houston. We'll be connecting with some women in Houston, but it's to get outside of our bubble for networking. And also we really wanna start to support women-owned businesses. So for those 2 days we're down there, we're going to go to women-owned restaurant. We're going to do some shopping at women-owned shops too. And my goal is to hopefully make it around the state so that we will eventually do these road trips, not just in big cities like Houston, but we'll go to smaller cities too. But it's our first in-person event, so I'm excited about that. And we've got a really cool luncheon on Saturday, and then we're going to do a little mural tour on Sunday. It'll be really, really fun. That's all on hertexas.co.
Well, listen. When I can't make Houston.
Okay.
Here y'all go again. Don't you forget to call me.
Oh, I will. No, we will. And I need to go more than just days.
What's that?
So right now we're just doing a weekend, testing it out. But eventually what I hope to do is have a whole week there. That's the goal for next, because it's so much Houston. I mean, you can't do everything in Houston in 2 days. So it's our thing. So I will definitely let you know.
Yes, that is so up my alley. I love that. I love what you're doing. As I've already said, I love your spirit. And I'm just glad that you came on today and just shared some of your light with us. So thank you again for being here with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for letting me come on.
Yes, ma'am. So listen, y'all have heard how to create the life that you want. And really, the gist of what we both talked about is just being unapologetic about going for it. Just go for it, right? So I will be back next week. Every Monday, I'm here at 6 p.m. Central with another woman entrepreneur, and we will be talking about another topic. So make sure that you join us next Monday right here